Hey, welcome back, everybody, for another episode of the Cyber Guys podcast, the cybersecurity podcast for everybody. My name is Andrew Valencia, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Hill. And hey, Mike, how you doing, man? You good? Are you good?
Man, I'm tired, man. Fatigued.
You look tired. You look exhausted. If I may ask, what has you so tired?
Man, I'm tired of the pandemic. I'm tired of politics. I'm tired of people. And you know what? I actually understand why there's this new phenomenon called cybersecurity fatigue. You know, people are just tired. They're tired of us.
I get that. I get that. We, cybersecurity professionals, IT professionals, experts, we kind of come off as Cassandras sometimes, right? I can understand that. I get that. We bang this drum of, hey, it's not if, it's when, and now we say it's not when, but how often, right?
Yeah.
And so after a while, I get it. I can understand why people get exhausted, and
Yeah,
and
man.
security fatigue is a real thing.
It's a real thing. I mean, today I just finished teaching a class this morning. And one of the things I talk about on the first day of this class is what is security? What is it? And we've talked about this in our podcast before, but the reality is it's an unattainable goal. And when people are trying to actually reach it as if you can achieve cybersecurity, they're beating their heads against a brick wall at full clip. It's not achievable. So ultimately, organizations have to learn to pace themselves and realize that you'll never achieve it. You just have to keep working at it. It has to be part of your battle rhythm.
But it's a slog. I mean, I understand that. I mean, it's a slog for us too, but imagine, just the general user out there. It's a slog for them to hear about, hey, here's all these rules. Here's all these things you need to do. How many times do I need to change my dang password? Right? How long is it now? How many different passwords do I need?
And how do you remember them all?
And how do you even remember them all? There is a real risk to organizations and just to consumers alike out there, of people just understanding that they're supposed to be, they're supposed to behave in the least risky manner possible when they're online, but because of security fatigue, they just don't. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Different reasons for that.
Some of it is just human nature. I mean, just look at the people's response to the pandemic. During the first few months of the pandemic, everybody had the masks on. They were ready to do it. They were locked in their rooms. Okay, whatever it takes to save the world from the pandemic. But 2 years in, even though it's not actually over, nobody wants to wear a mask. Nobody wants to socially distance. We're just done with it. Everybody's done with it. Doesn't change the fact that you can still catch COVID. You can even still die. But no one wants to continue in that heightened level of alert status 24/7. And it's the same with cybersecurity. No one wants to stay on high alert all the time. So how do we deal with it? How do we help people to find the necessary cadence to not give in to fatigue when it comes to security?
And it's definitely not lecturing them ad nauseum about their responsibilities when it comes to the security of their system, to the companies or organization systems, or even their own privacy, right? It's not about, these pamphlets that some organizations hand out on an annual basis and count as their training or awareness campaigns that just remind people to do very basic minimums, maintain minimum cyber hygiene.
Right,
it's about more than that, right? It's about engagement.
Here's the thing. Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. I mean, at some point, people just stop caring. They're like, I've been hacked, but I'm not dead. I don't care anymore. Or it's too disruptive.
It's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
Or even if I was hacked, what is there to steal? My data is not that valuable, so who cares, right?
Or it's inevitable anyway. I'm spending my whole budget on this stuff and I still got hacked. So what's the point? I mean, that's the frustration that leads to some of this fatigue, and
Yeah,
there's some studies on it now.
no, no, absolutely. There's plenty of studies, and one of which I want to jump into in
Yeah.
just a second. But just to carry what you were saying for a sec, it affects everybody. It affects the C-suite or the executive level of organizations as much as it does, the general user. It,
Right.
it, it occurs throughout uh, companies, throughout organizations, and as we've discussed previously in the podcast, insider threats are the biggest vectors of
Yeah.
attack when it comes to data breaches and hacking attempts. So
Wittingly or unwittingly, whether they know it
unwitting,
or not.
exactly, and
Unwittingly
those
more often
insider
than not.
threats,
Yeah.
right? And those insider threats really are typically individuals who suffer from security fatigue, who make a decision that maybe they know they're not supposed to, or that they just don't care, or hey, you know what? IT has literally asked me to change my password 12 times this month. I'm exhausted.
You
If
know what?
if the government, if this company can't secure themselves, how am I supposed to?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny that reminds me of the movie Breach that really heightened that point. One of the biggest insider threats in the FBI ever, John Hanson, and they were getting into his mind, and that was one of his things. You guys won't do it. I'm going to show you what's wrong with your systems and why you're not securing the national interest like you should. That was his own little self deluded motive behind some of the uh, biggest breaches of internal security ever in the history of the national security agencies. So it's a real phenomenon. And while it may not be to the extreme of an FBI informant turning against the national interest, it still happens, whether it's on an individual scale, at someone's home, in their company. When they just get tired of it, and sometimes they get tired of the bureaucracy that's in the way between what they believe idealistically should be happening and what's actually happening. So yeah, all those things, those are real factors, man. You're not kidding.
Yeah, and it really just depends. The response of employees or users to security measures is completely dependent upon the security culture of the
Yeah,
organization.
good
Uh,
word. Security
what do
culture.
we,
That's a
yeah? So
good
what do
one.
we mean about security? Yeah, talk a little bit about security culture and what we mean when we say security culture.
You know, I like that term because a culture is something that you pick up almost innately from your childhood, from all of the persons in your life, in your sphere. Everybody around you imprints on you, conditions you, and helps you to accept things. I mean, it's like an accent. No one tries to pick up an accent. Most people don't even realize they have an accent, but you get it. You get it because you've been inundated in an environment where that's how people pronounce their words. That's the way people talk. So you speak like they speak. It imprints on you. When you're immersed in a culture, you're shaped by it. A cybersecurity aware culture shapes you. It helps you to not even think about it. You don't get fatigued from speaking with your native accent. You shouldn't get fatigued from uh, responding to the conditioning of being cyber aware and implementing good cybersecurity practices. It should be innate, it should be natural.
It,
Unfortunately, that's
it,
not happened. We haven't reached that point yet.
we haven't reached that point. We haven't had that ubiquity yet, right?
No.
I always liken cybersecurity to any other type of security that everyone knows, right?
Right.
When you get home, you lock your door. Why do
Right.
we lock our doors? Um,
The boogeyman, man.
when
The
you get
boogeyman.
right, when you get in the vehicle, when you get in the car, you put a seatbelt on. Why do we put a seatbelt on? Right?
It
There are
wasn't always the
rhymes and
case.
reasons.
A lot of
There's
people thought if it was constraining. Oh my God, I got to put this thing on. Oh, it's uncomfortable. But after enough conditioning, we don't think about it anymore. It's natural.
yeah. and it's, I think it's like reinforcement of positive behavior, or like the behavior you want to see, and it's not demeaning
Yeah.
or anything like that, but it's, you know, as cybersecurity professionals, there is a difference between cultivating positive behavior, positive cybersecurity practices within your organization, as opposed to the annual lecturing that people do. That a lot of cybersecurity professionals, we've gone into organizations and we've seen where their on-site cybersecurity professionals or their IT staff have literally just ad nauseum lectured their employees to death over, this is what you're doing wrong, this is what you need to do, here's the risks, here's the blah 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 blah. And
Right.
what that does is innately, what do people tend to do? They'll just
Tune
switch
out.
off.
They zone
They'll
out.
just
They
tune it
zone out.
out.
But you know what though? They really actually are enablers of that behavior because how often do they do their security audits? How often do they do their security reviews? It's something you only do every blue moon. You don't have to think about it 99% of the time. And then all of a sudden, everyone's hair is on fire. You better deal with it now. Well, if that's your approach, if you only consider it as a moment in time that you have to respond and prepare and get ready for an inspection, and the rest of the time you don't think about it, well, of course, you're not going to be conditioned to make it part of your regular process, your regular
And
order.
yeah,
It's not
something
going to
that we've
happen.
seen a lot too is almost the converse of that, where, you know, everything is, every issue with cybersecurity and IT is always at the forefront. There's always a problem to fix. There's always something to, there's always a fire to put out. And when that is the battle rhythm, that if that's the cadence of the day to day in the organization, cybersecurity, there's not a lot of room left over for people to take that into account, to consider. They're just, it's another problem that has to be solved, that we're never going to get to the top of the hill. We're literally Sisyphus just pushing this boulder up a hill. We're never going to get there. And that is wholly on the cybersecurity staff of that organization, and
Yeah.
really failing to build,
And
like we said,
and leadership.
that culture.
And leadership. I mean, it's a top down thing. I mean, where truly do the senior leaders place security? Do they place it where it ought to be? Is it right there next to profits, next to primary mission objectives? Is it really at the top of their priority list? And in many cases,
Yeah.
it's not. It's just something they have to check, a box they have to check. They have to actually meet this as exit criteria, but it's not really part of their entrance considerations.
Yeah, so NIST actually did a study regarding security fatigue, and some of the participants' answers to a lot of the questions that they asked regarding the ability for them to maintain a certain level of security awareness, and to act on that knowledge. It's kind of stunning. I want to read one of the participants' responses here
Yeah, yeah.
with regard
I want
to
to hear that. I want to hear
we're
that.
yeah.
What did they
So
say?
I they said, I think I'm desensitized to it. I know bad things can happen. You get this warning that some virus is going to attack your computer, and you get a bunch of emails that say, don't open any emails, blah, blah, blah. I think I don't pay any attention to those things anymore because it's in the past. People get weary of being bombarded by watch out for this and watch out for that.
I think it just gets down to a fundamental psychological reality. It's the broken light effect, this broken stoplight. We've all experienced it. You come to an intersection, the light is red. Okay, we're used to going to red lights, no big deal. We wait, and then we wait, and then we wait. And then we see something really weird. We see the oncoming traffic in the other direction, you know, start moving, stop, and then start moving again, indicating that somehow or another we missed a whole cycle. Well, after you sit in that light beyond the normal period of time and you've seen that bizarre activity where others are moving along with no recognition of the fact that you've been there longer than them, what do? You eventually just say, I don't care about the red light. I'm going, I'm proceeding through. I'm going to look both ways, but I'm proceeding because this is a broken light and I need to get on with my life. That's the psychology. And that's what keeps happening in cybersecurity over and over again. It's the red light effect, the broken light effect.
if you're going to make me memorize 25 passwords, they're not going to be 12 to 15 characters long and with special characters and numbers. I'm not an uppercase and lowercase, right?
Right.
That's what you're talking about. It's, you know,
And that's just the simple things.
and that's the simple things. That's the simple
Yeah.
things. And when you consider that, the other thing I think is really, really interesting, something else that this NIST study did pick up on is that users are inundated not just in their work life, but also in their personal lives, because we now use the internet for everything. We have a username and password for everything. How many
Right.
passwords do I need to remember for work? How many usernames and passwords do I need to remember for my personal email and my Netflix and my
Right.
so on and so forth? People are
The list
inundated
goes
with
on.
this,
It goes
and
on and
at the
on.
end of the day,
And
they're going to start, just the psychology behind this is the same as most other things, right? You mentioned fatigue with COVID-19 before. It's the same with a lot of things. Inundated enough, the human brain is going to just shut down. They're going to say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to deal with this. I don't care what the risk is, because
and
having to remember another gosh dang password is more painful than the adverse effects that may stem
yeah.
from reusing the same
At
password.
least you get to a point where you believe that. It may not actually be
But
true, but you
no, no, no.
believe that.
That's
I mean,
again, that's the response, right?
yeah, but
That's
exactly.
the human response.
But
Yeah.
I mean, talk about the COVID for pandemic. Perfect example. You know, my family, all of us in our house on lockdown, doing what we're supposed to do. We went 2 years, never caught it, never anything. You know, we were doing what we were supposed to do. But finally, after 2 years, we took some risks. We just said, we just need to see some friends. We haven't seen them in 4 years, this sort of thing. And guess what happened? A member of my family got COVID. 2 years, nothing. And then we catch it because we didn't take the fact that we were fatigued with it seriously and realize that fatigue doesn't change reality. Fatigue doesn't change reality. The reality is still there no matter what. You may think, hey, I haven't been hacked yet. I just need to just do what I need to do. That's when the light changes green. That's when the oncoming traffic, speeds up. That's when the danger hits you. So we have to find ways to help people to avoid the fatigue and maintain the persistence, the
That's
vigilance.
and that's such a good that's a really good point that you make too, because in the NIST study, they use terms, participants use terms like being tired, being turned off, being overwhelmed, and that led them to essentially doing a cost benefit analysis, right?
Right.
Whether or not the results of that cost benefit analysis were accurate or
Yeah.
with reality, to the participant, to the individual, the risks that are associated with going out and seeing friends, or using the same password for the 15th account that you're going to make, in their eyes, the risk does not outweigh the convenience factor.
Mhm.
And that stems directly from that feeling of fatigue, the overtired, just
Just
the
being done.
overwhelmedness of it
You feel
all.
done. You feel done. You're just done with it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, okay, so we know what security fatigue is. We know it exists. We know why it happens. It's psychology. The human brains, our humans are just gonna human, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
in reality, in the real world, in real applications, how do we combat security fatigue? And there's a couple different ways we can do it, right?
Yeah.
The answer, and it's funny, I've researched this topic, I've looked stuff up about it, and I love these articles that come, how does combat cybersecurity fatigue? And like one of the answers is, make sure you're always patching your software, make sure you're always updating, make sure you're always running your antivirus. And it's like, that's what's leading people to have security fatigue. You're giving them more security tasks
Yeah.
to do. That's not the answer. So what is the
Well, no,
answer?
it's not. It's not that it's wrong. I mean, I disagree a little bit that it's not the answer. The thing is, the routine of cyber hygiene has to be like the routine of physical hygiene. You don't get tired of bathing and brushing your teeth. You have to brush your teeth every day, probably a couple of times a day. Are you
I mean,
fatigued
I
from
do.
brushing
I
teeth?
still do it. I
Yeah,
get tired having to
you
do
know,
it. I'm not gonna
but
lie.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing though. You have to put it into forms that are manageable. Brushing your teeth doesn't take an hour. Brushing your teeth doesn't take 3 hours. Brushing your teeth does not overwhelm every other thing you want to do during the day. We have to reduce the impact on cyber hygiene tasks so that it simplifies what people are doing and can then drift it into the background. Oh, that's just something we do. Oh, after you finished your morning routine, you don't even think about the fact that you brushed your teeth anymore. You know you did. You smell your breath and hopefully nothing's stinking. But for the most part, you're not consumed throughout your whole day with, you know, how well you brushed your teeth that morning because it's something you do every morning, every
Yeah,
day.
if oral hygiene took 45 minutes every single day, a lot less people would probably do it. I think that's a really good
Exactly.
point.
More teeth
So
would be
we
falling
have
out
so
and gum disease and everything else.
yeah, so part of cybersecurity hygiene or best practices and the actions that general users have to take have to be catered to their convenience.
You
As
have
backwards as that may sound, making it more convenient for an individual to stay secure is the best way to ensure that they don't get fatigued.
absolutely
So, how do we do
crucial.
that in real applications? I think a really good example is no longer requiring username and passwords, right? You can do
Right.
PIV credentials, you can do one time passcodes, things of that nature that actually to a certain degree take the mental aspect for an individual out of it to some degree,
I mean,
right?
just
To
think
put
about
it
smartphones.
onto
Yeah,
a
just think about
token, put it on
smartphones. Yeah,
exactly.
just think about smartphones. I mean, nowadays you just look at your smartphone and it unlocks to your facial recognition, or you use your thumb and that's your passcode. That's your authenticator. So the idea of making it convenient, it's not that the industry ignores it completely because the cell phone companies have picked up on, hey, how do we maintain security and make it more convenient so that people don't have to remember pins all the time? Well, hey, let's use biometrics. And people love it. Is it the most secure way? Not necessarily, but it does add that extra benefit of good security with convenience.
It's better than nothing for sure. And I think that what a lot of users do see, what a lot of consumers see on some platforms is how many passwords they really have to remember just to get to one site. So you have to remember a username, you have to remember a password. Then after you enter those things, you now have to go remember a pin that you made, a 4 to 6 digit pin that you made up, and then you have to do a captcha, or you have to do one of those image puzzles to prove that you're not a computer. There's a point where people just say, screw it. I'm either not going to come up with something like very complicated to remember, or I'm just not going to use it altogether.
Yeah, but
And
that's
you're
where
absolutely right.
federated services.
Cutting the knot, the Gordian knot, so to speak, is sacrificing robust cybersecurity or robust security to cater to that convenience factor. Because
But
having something
not that you
is
have to
better than
really
nothing.
cut it, but not that you really have to cut it that much. But you can simplify it. A lot of organizations
Yeah,
through federated identity management are giving people the convenience of single sign-on across different enterprises, and they're not necessarily less secure. So long as your single sign-on authenticator is highly secure, then when you have a multi-vendor shared use of the federated identity management system, you're kind of marrying the two together. You're
right.
creating a situation where there is convenience, but you're not completely sacrificing security. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, one set of keys to the kingdom can be a problem, and single sign-on is not a panacea, but it does
Sure.
kind of address some of the fatigue of having so many different authenticators.
Yeah, you really do have the best of both worlds. That's just kind of the same argument with things with like password managers. Um, have the same issues, but they provide the same level of convenience. uh, 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 while maintaining a certain level of security. And that's where like multi-factor authentication comes into play. where building these robust authentication mechanisms is really, really important because the fence line, so to speak, the gate has to be secure, has to be
Right.
you know, uh, very strong and resilient, so that you can have that kind of convenience built in. The answer that is absolutely wrong here, obviously, is doing nothing, right?
No.
Understanding the risks and throwing your hands up in the air and saying, well, you know what, just it's going to happen anyways. Might as well happen to me.
Well, those are the folks that are still catching COVID. I mean, let's just keep it real. If you just throw your hands up and say, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not wearing masks, I'm not going to social distance, I'm just going to go to the party and breathe everybody's funk. That's not the answer either. I mean, you got to find a happy solution where you're not a slave to the uh, security measures, but you're also not putting yourself in the open, in the wind, in the most dangerous and precarious situations you can imagine. You got to find that happy medium. And I really think one of the keys is simplification mechanisms in our security
Yes.
measures. We have to make it easier. We have to make it background because human nature, we've had a whole episode on the human factor. So we know that the human factor is the weak link always. So anytime we can reduce the footprint of the human weaknesses, we're really improving security by that action by default, I would say.
I'm so glad you said that, because one thing I want to close with something. I want to close with something directly from the NIST study on security fatigue. And I'll read it just right here verbatim. While users' cybersecurity behavior is often portrayed as irrational, in fact, it might be quite rational and reflect an astute cost benefit analysis that results in users choosing to ignore complex security advice that promises little and delivers less.
Hmm.
That, in and of itself, I'm wrong, but I believe that I'm right because it's just too complicated to figure out. Simplifying authentication methods, simplifying the nature of cybersecurity itself, making cybersecurity palatable is is the silver bullet for security
It
fatigue.
is. It is. It has to be a regular part of life. Until we make it a regular part of life, until we're integrated into every aspect of information technology seamlessly, not the afterthought, not the year end audit, not the catastrophic event in response to some new vulnerability that's made the news. No, it's simply part of our DNA. It's part of the way we're made. Then it's something we could actually afford to take for granted because it's just part of what we do on the regular. And then the added measures of security, when it does come to the audit, when it does come to the extra layers of security that we add on top of it, well, it's really just the cherry on top. It's not the core, which means it doesn't have to be so overwhelming. Part of what makes it so overwhelming, honestly, is because of the poor state of security in so many different organizations and systems.
Well, that's where we're going to end it today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, do all the cool YouTube stuff, like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, stay safe, be secure, be sure. We'll see you next time.